Hey, still rocking that old high school dropout style. Huh. Today at the reunion, I ran into a classmate who used to mock me back in the day. Even now, as adults, he hasn't changed. He saw me, grabbed his wine glass, and poured it all over me. The rich aroma clung to me, and I felt terrible. Bet you're thrilled to get a taste of the high life, high school dropout, he sneered. He hasn't changed a bit. I was beyond angry and filled with disappointment. That's when I made up my mind. My name is Mark. I grew up in a typical family with a self-employed dad and a stay-at-home mom. My childhood was pretty carefree. After school, I'd toss my backpack and play at the neighborhood park until dusk. But things changed when I hit middle school. My dad stopped coming home regularly because of work. He'd come home after I was in bed and leave before I woke up. On his rare days off, he'd take us to amusement parks or for drives. One late night, I saw my mom sighing over the household budget. "Mom, are you okay?" I asked. She smiled and said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry about anything." But I could see she was worn out. Dinner started to have fewer side dishes, and the fruits we used to enjoy disappeared. My lunch became plain rice with a few pickles. One day, Brad, a classmate, noticed my meager lunch and started picking on me. "Your dad ran off, didn't he? That's why you have such lame lunches," he laughed with his friends. I was furious but thought of my mom and held back. Brad was the son of the president of a local company and was seen as a model student by teachers. But he used his dad's status to bully others. My classmates, fearing him, began to avoid me. Brad's bullying escalated until one lunchtime. He approached me while I was eating in a secluded stairwell. Typical peasant's lunch, he sneered and reached for my lunchbox. I knocked his hand away, but he grabbed it and smashed it on the floor. Seeing the scattered food, I thought of my mom's effort. I grabbed Brad by the collar. "Think you can hit me? You know what'll happen," he taunted. I lost control and hit him. A teacher, alerted by the noise, dragged us to the office. "I'm so sorry," my mom said, bowing repeatedly. The teacher believed Brad's story and scolded me, while Brad faced no consequences. Faced with this blatant injustice, all I could do was endure. After the hellish guidance session, as my mother and I were leaving, the teacher spat out at me. "I'm worried about what kind of adult you'll become. Always resorting to violence. Can you even become a decent person? Just you watch." But our life became increasingly difficult. My mom's part-time job was not enough to make ends meet. Despite the violent incident with Brad, my mom believed in me to the end. Always kind, my mom was someone I didn't want to burden any further. So, with the sole desire to ease her burden, I decided not to pursue college and instead chose to work. Decades have since passed. Days whirl by, seasons change rapidly, and society evolves at a dizzying pace, brimming with new conveniences. Before I knew it, the familiar streets had transformed, and my bitter, dark adolescent years seemed to fade into the distance. It was around this time that I received an invitation to a middle school reunion. When I saw that letter, the image of Brad's sneering face came back to me. He would undoubtedly be there. Honestly, I wasn't keen on going, but we were all grown-ups now. Surely, he wouldn't start anything petty. With that thought, I decided to attend. "Hey Kev, long time no see. You look good," being called by my nickname by a classmate. It felt like I was back in middle school. While many had drifted apart after the violence, a few classmates who remained friends through it all were there, and he was one of them. "Man, you've aged a bit, haven't you?" he said, patting his protruding belly. "You too," I replied. As we shared updates and reminisced, a familiar voice rang out. "Hey, you are here too, huh? Wow, Brad, that's you." He seemed quite drunk and was in high spirits. "Brad, you okay?" I was surprised at myself for expressing concern, but Brad, glaring fiercely, retorted, "A bottom feeder like you worrying about me. I haven't fallen that low. Listen up." Holding a wine glass, he boasted, "I run Bradley Merchandising. It's wise to stay on my good side." He laughed arrogantly, then peering into my face, he exclaimed, "Hey, the high school dropout. Still rocking that pathetic style, huh? Well, let me treat you to some fine wine today." With that, Brad held his wine glass over my head and poured the wine all over me. The surrounding crowd went silent, staring at us in a scene of total chaos. The reunion was completely ruined. The rich aroma clung to my entire body, leaving me feeling terrible. How about that? Bet you're thrilled to get a taste of the high-life, high school dropout. He hadn't changed a bit from the times he used his privileged position to cause trouble. I was beyond angry, filled with disappointment, all my secret hopes shattered. "Brad, I've made up my mind," I said. Decided about what? To Brad's mocking face, I delivered a stark announcement. "You're fired." The room fell silent for a moment. Fired? What's that supposed to mean? High school dropout, can't even speak English? Brad asked, clearly baffled. But I said seriously, "It means exactly what it sounds like." The crowd began to murmur. A former classmate tapped my shoulder and asked a question that seemed to float in everyone's mind. "So, what do you do now?" "I currently work at a food company as renowned as Bradley Merchandising." Wiping my head, and faced with a handkerchief I took from my pocket, I started explaining, "I'm in charge of corporate acquisitions, and I'm actually working on acquiring your company. As the next president, you should know this better than anyone." "What? What are you talking about?" Brad, trying to act tough, had his lips twitching and sweat on his forehead. "President Johnson should have officially contacted you about this, right?" "Johnson? President? Wait, the company you work for is—" Brad's face turned completely pale. "Yes, I work for Johnson Merchandising, a company my father is the president of. After high school, I joined this company and now serve as an executive director overseeing the entire company. Deciding not to pursue college and instead, work was tough, as there were hardly any companies willing to hire someone with only a high school education. I couldn't afford to be choosy anymore. I applied for any job I could find and ended up working part-time at a logistics warehouse. However, the barrier due to my lack of education was thicker than I imagined. Once people learned about my educational background, their attitudes changed, and I was never considered for permanent employment. Would my life end just as a factory worker? Lost in despair, I was returning home from work one day when I encountered the unexpected. "I'm home." Home, huh? Welcome back. There was my father, who I never thought I'd see again. He looked much older, with white hair mixed in. Despite his weak smile, the sight of him brought a surge of anger, thinking of all the hardships we endured. "You just waltz back now. You have no idea how much we suffered." Then my father tearfully apologized. "I'm sorry, honey. Mark, I'm truly sorry. I was so focused on getting the company on track that I neglected you. No excuse can change the fact that I caused you unnecessary hardship. I'm deeply sorry." My mother and I, without a word, just stared at him. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I want to at least apologize to you both in some way." The house was completely silent. Eventually, my mother spoke up. "Regardless, I'm thankful. You've come back. Things might not go back to how they were, but I do want to try and rebuild our family little by little. But there's a condition." "What is it?" "Give this boy a full-time job at your company." "What?" I turned to my mother in surprise. "Mark has been working hard since he decided not to go to high school. He should be enjoying his youth like others his age, but due to his educational background, he has struggled to find a full-time position." My mother's face was serious, almost frighteningly so. How much time had passed? All right, Mark can work at our company, but on one condition. He must take the GED. Understand? There was a sense of earnestness in my father's voice, his concern for my future. Evident, considering I had to give up high school to work. And so, I stepped up from a factory temp to an employee at a renowned company. Of course, it wasn't easy at first. In fact, it was a continuous struggle. Being the president's son made me a target of envy, and I was often harshly criticized for even minor mistakes. Being new to corporate life, I struggled with understanding business etiquette and social norms, sweating through every new challenge. My colleagues would just scoff, offering no help. I felt completely isolated at work. Despite this, I worked tirelessly, volunteering for menial tasks and responding earnestly to unreasonable demands from superiors. Seeing documents I worked hard on being thrown into the trash with a smirk or finding my desk littered with trash, I often thought about quitting. It was disheartening to be judged through the lens of being the president's son despite all my efforts. What kept me going was my mother's presence. The mixed emotions she must have swallowed when she asked for me to be hired at my father's company must have been excruciating. For her sake, I had to meet the company's expectations. As I continued to work relentlessly, gradually people began to recognize my efforts. Slowly, I was accepted as a team member, and this began to reflect in my work results. It possibly provided a healthy stimulus for other employees as the company's sales started to rise. Year by year, as a result of my hard work, I was recognized and promoted. From this year, I became an executive director entrusted with important tasks. I have been involved in negotiations for the acquisition of Bradley Merchandising, a company that had been on a downward spiral for several years. Kev, you've made an incredible rise through the ranks. Never thought we'd have an executive director among our classmates. It's going to be awkward just casually inviting you out now. My unexpected identity caused a stir among the crowd. But Brad, still in disbelief, insisted, "Stop lying. I don't accept such a tall tale." Well, it seems your dad, the president, didn't share much about the company's situation with you. It's not surprising you didn't know, but my father was going to make me president. About that, I said, my expression serious, my father instructed me to overhaul the entire management of Bradley Merchandising, from the president down. That's impossible. Brad's face froze. But I didn't have enough evidence to make such a drastic decision. Then I heard about the reunion and remembered you were supposed to be the next president. I thought it wouldn't be too late to meet and talk here. I let out a breath, releasing the disappointment welling up inside. Brad, you haven't changed at all. Still belittling and blaming others, still full of baseless confidence. That doesn't mean you can fire me. Come on, help me out. We're classmates, right? His attitude had changed drastically from his earlier arrogance, now desperately pleading. But I wasn't going to soften my stance over something like this. I just made a logical decision as a business leader. Running a company isn't as easy as you think, I said firmly and grabbed Brad's shoulders, looking him in the eye. I've faced many injustices as the president's son, but I never gave up because this company was my only path. You had more advantages attending a good high school and graduating from college. It's time you put in real effort for once in your life. Tears held back, my voice shaking, I spoke to Brad, but he just stared back in silence, not uttering a word. A month after the reunion, I stood in front of the Bradley Merchandising building with my father. Today we'll officially proceed with the acquisition. I had confided in my father the day before, and after some reluctance, he agreed to my terms. We've been waiting for you, said the president of Bradley Merchandising, greeting us as he entered the meeting room, followed by his son Brad. Bradley spoke of his intentions to have Brad succeed him as president. Now about the acquisition. He prompted me to start the discussion, but Brad's behavior was appalling, far from what one would expect from a future president or even a professional. I raised my voice. Hey, Brad, are you even listening? This is about the future of the company. Do you even realize the responsibilities of a president? I don't need to hear that from you, Brad retorted. Then he turned to his father, saying something outrageous. Dad, are you sure it's okay to trust our company to someone who just climbed up using his parents' influence? Brad's suggestion that he was more capable of making beneficial decisions for the company seemed almost delusional. My father, witnessing this, clearly showed a look of exasperation. Even the usually stern face of Bradley grew more severe. Fool, what do you know about our company? He said, his temples throbbing with anger. Brad could only stare back with an expression I had never seen before. Bradley continued, unabated by his anger. Mark's right. Your attitude today is beyond disrespectful. Running a company is not a game. If you're not serious, then leave. Brad's voice was pitifully weak in response to his father's overwhelming presence. The president then stood up, facing us with a serious expression. I apologize for this disgraceful display. I've been too indulgent with my son, expecting him to become more responsible in the workforce, but I was mistaken. I never imagined he would behave so foolishly, especially in such a setting. To you, the executive director of Johnson, merchandising, and you, Mark, I apologize for his many indiscretions. As a parent, I am truly sorry. My father then addressed Bradley. Your feelings are clear, Bradley. The once imposing figure of the food company's president seemed utterly diminished. Bradley, with a desperate look, continued. President Mark, we need your help to save Bradley Merchandising. We no longer have the strength to continue on our own. If we come under your company's wing, I will step down from all my management roles and leave. The same goes for the entire board. But please, keep our employees, our precious staff, without letting anyone go. With that, he bowed so deeply his forehead nearly touched the table. I looked at my father, who seemed deep in thought, his eyes closed. Dad, I murmured quietly. He nodded solemnly. Bradley, I began. Yes, I see how much you care about your company. Given that, let's give you another chance to turn things around. A chance. Brad and his father looked shocked. Yes, a chance. If you genuinely care about your employees, there's still something to be done. We'll support you as much as we can. If that fails, we have no choice but to take over completely. Mark, how can I ever thank you? Beside his tearful father, Brad looked completely drained, as if all the strength had left his body. I continued speaking, glancing between the two. I've always resented my father, I began, causing a look of shock in Brad. He neglected our family under the guise of work, forcing me to give up high school. I aimed to prove him wrong. But my mother, who suffered the most, forgave him. I still vividly remember my mother's resolute face when she chose to forgive. At first, I couldn't understand her, but now I get why she decided to forgive. She taught me the importance of it. Mark, I heard my father murmur softly. I am who I am today because my mother forgave my father. And recently, I finally felt like I can forgive him too. Bradley nodded in agreement, feeling as if pushed forward by an invisible force. I continued my thoughts. Everyone deserves a second chance. People become stronger by overcoming adversity, I said, turning to Brad, who was slouched back in his chair. Brad, it starts here. Isn't this your time to step up? But I don't know anything about running a company, Brad replied. I placed my hand on his shoulder. It's okay to start now. Work hard, and the results will follow. Mark. Brad looked at me, a faint smile on his face for the first time. After countless discussions, Bradley Merchandising agreed to a business partnership with Johnson Merchandising and began the path to recovery. Brad became the new president with his father as an advisor. Brad, shedding the pride of being the son of Bradley Merchandising, worked tirelessly to regain the trust of each business partner through humble visits. His transformation inspired the employees. Their mindset began to shift. The company, once complacent under the guise of a large corporation and marred by internal power struggles, saw its employees stand up to the challenge. Sales put more effort into their work, and the administration focused on creating a welcoming environment for business partners. Notably enhanced working conditions by revising inclusive welfare policies and eliminating exclusive systems, contributing to a significant turnaround for the formerly struggling Bradley Merchandising. Encouraged by the changes in everyone, including Brad, the company's sales gradually climbed like ascending stairs. This year, we were even able to provide bonuses to all employees, albeit modest ones. Similarly, our company's performance improved significantly, and we've now reached a point where we can sponsor various advertising campaigns. Mark, President, hurry up. Just a minute. Wait for me, I replied. The reunion became a catalyst for rekindling friendships with classmates. Initially wary of Brad, they were now impressed by his transformation, sharing jokes and laughter. Hey, can we drop the president title when we're off work? I replied with faint annoyance playfully. It's just a habit. Brad said, scratching his head in embarrassment, his demeanor endearingly sincere. Then at least call me by my old nickname when we're not working. I forgot what it was. You used to call me that all the time. Can't believe you remember that, Brad said, fighting exasperation. All right, how about this? From now on, every time you call me president, you owe me a drink. I thought to myself it was indeed a good idea. That's a good idea. Okay, Kev, that's a first, Brad said, stopping in his tracks and calling me by the nostalgic nickname. Thanks, Kev. Human nature tends to cling to negative emotions, and I've been no exception. I resented being looked down upon for being a high school dropout and felt bitter about my social standing. If I hadn't forgiven my father, I might not have reached out to Brad and others. Despite all the harassment from Brad, I couldn't give up on him, remembering my own struggles. People who overcome hardships can face any challenge ahead. If you strongly desire to start over, you can change. From that point, I plan to lead the company humbly, navigating the challenges of business with dedication alongside my valuable friends and colleagues. My is named Victor. When I was little, my parents divorced, so I grew up with just my mother. Mom had a chronic ailment, which made it difficult for her to work even though she was employed full-time. She could only work a couple of hours on a part-time basis. We led an extremely poor lifestyle because we were dependent only on my mother's income, while my father did not provide child support. Even so, I was content to be in her company. Our meals were simple, especially for a growing boy, but we always had a good time sharing them with her and had a lot of smiles. Despite her protests, I chose to begin working as soon as I graduated from middle school because I wanted to lessen her load. During exam season, I told Mom that I was going to work instead of going to high school. She spoke up, which was not like her at all. She sobbed and added, "Go to high school. Don't worry about the money." I was hesitant to say anything after seeing her like that, but I eventually decided to work since I believe I can be more useful. I'm not that brilliant. I want to return the favor because you've done so much for me. With tears running down her cheeks, she added, "My health is the reason I'm like this." That isn't the case. I choose to work because I want to. It has nothing to do with your health. Don't cry, please. Let's enjoy our supper together like we usually do. I told her so as I made my way to the kitchen. I had to fight back tears when I heard her remark, "Thank you. I'm so proud of you." Mr. Thompson, my middle school teacher, was against my plan to get a job as soon as I graduated, stating that your mother will be saddened. However, even Mr. Thompson had to back down when I firmly stated that I had discussed it with my mother, and she understood. To be honest, it was hard to locate a middle school graduating job at a corporation. I couldn't even get an interview because the majority of employers demanded at least a college degree. At that point, Mr. Thompson stated, "I know of a company that is hiring for sales workers. Even if someone only completed middle school, they still want to interview someone who is driven." I yelled out, "Yes, please," before he could finish. "I'll carry it out. Kindly set up the interview." Then I went to the company with my mother, dressed in an oversized suit. Mr. Thompson presented the HR representative to us. He laughed when he saw how anxious I was and added, "Don't be too tight. Mr. Thompson told me about your character. You don't give up lightly and you have guts, right? We would adore having you join our team." I received the job offer right away. They had never before employed a recent middle school graduate, but Mr. Thompson had been able to convince them to consider me for weeks. The president of the company, Mr. Johnson, approved me because he believed I could provide the business a fresh viewpoint. Mom was listening to me and kept saying thank you with tears in her eyes. I'll put in my best effort. I stood up and showed respect as I said, "Thank you for this chance." The HR staff stated that although the work is challenging, it is also fulfilling. We shook hands and said, "Let's work hard together." Mr. Thompson was crying over the phone when I called to break the wonderful news to him. I was on the verge of tears, but I restrained myself. Mr. Thompson gave me a silver pen and a blue tie as a gift on graduation day and said, "Maybe I shouldn't be doing this for just one student, but don't give up. Keep going." When I wore that gift on my first day of work, I felt as though Mr. Thompson was encouraging me, and my confidence caused my spine to straighten. 5 years have passed since I began working for this company, and time has flown by. Since I had never worked in sales or even part-time employment before, I made mistakes every day at first and received criticism from my manager. But I improved as a teacher because of my colleagues. I was good at training with empathy because I was about the same age as the recent graduates. Upon noticing, my manager frequently gave me the task of training new hires. Mr. Johnson gave his daughter the reins in the spring of my first year there. Despite his advanced age, he made the decision to retire, stating, "The next generation should shape the future. My ideas and ways of working are outdated." I learned via rumors that Mr. Johnson and his spouse relocated overseas to live a more relaxed life after retirement. After graduating from college, his daughter Emily supervised a regional sales office and quickly increased its performance. Emily went on to become the president of the company. Using her sales experience, her philosophy as president was to deliver accurate and timely services. Emily was interested in me from the moment she joined our team. I think she was merely interested in me since I was the newest employee. She would always start a conversation with me when we met at work. She suggested that we share contact details for later on, so we did. From then on, she texted me every day. The messages varied, usually being informal conversations ranging from basic good mornings and good evenings to work exchanges. She then declared one day, "I've been drawn to you ever since I laid eyes on you. Are you interested in dating me?" I thus began dating her. I was dubious at first, wondering why Emily would pick me out of all the other mates. Nevertheless, she was breathtakingly gorgeous, and I couldn't help but be captivated to her allure. Emily was very much a businesswoman at work, which made her all the more charming when she was with me. She revealed her actual self to me, and I felt honored. Few people knew about our relationship since we kept it quiet. Most of our time together was spent in my apartment or on trips. Holding hands, eating meals together, and hanging together in my place was just like any other couple. I had never really loved anyone but my mother until this moment. Emily abruptly stopped reaching out to me at work after we had been dating for a few months. She seemed to be avoiding me, refusing to even say hello. It was in front of me one day that I witnessed her questioning a superior, asking, Why did you hire a middle school graduate? Her behavior had changed when she got to know my mother, looking back. Emily had insisted on meeting Mom, and I granted her request even though I felt it was premature. We had made reservations at a restaurant close to my family's house, and at first, we were having a nice time talking and eating. But I do recall how Emily's talkativeness significantly decreased when Mom indicated that she had begun working as soon as she graduated from middle school in order to support me. We didn't talk much on the trip back. Because I thought she was sick, I said, "Should we just go back to your place today?" Usually she would insist on remaining with me longer, but this time she just said, "Okay," and hurried off. Looking back, she just answered, "It's okay," and walked out of my house as if she were fleeing, even though I volunteered to take her home because I was concerned. Now I realized Emily's attitude had altered when she found that I had graduated from middle school. She continued to visit the sales department on a daily basis after that, seemingly observing the staff members. She would say something unpleasant, like, "The presence of a middle school graduate even dulls the atmosphere," if she knew I was here. I received a call to the president's office approximately a week later. "Why are your sales so poor compared to others?" This is how Emily questioned me. "I've been focusing on training new recruits," I started to say, but she interrupted me, stating that someone with only a middle school education could not possibly train new recruits. "Put your attention on your own work if you have time for such pointless activities. Only when you are skilled yourself can you instruct novices. Recognize that you have until next month to reach this quota." I was stunned to hear this and immediately turned to look at the document she was holding. There were sales goals in there that not even the best performers had hit before. "That's impossible in a month," I objected. "If you have time to train newcomers, you should be able to do it, right?" Emily said, smiling mischievously. After work that day, I felt like I had lost all hope. My manager, who was aware of the circumstances, promised to speak with Emily on my behalf. My coworkers also made an effort to uplift me. But the very following day, I handed in my resignation to her, exhausted. She said, "As expected, this is the fate of an incompetent middle school graduate," and I tried not to cry as I left her office. My manager stopped me as I was packing to leave the company, continually apologizing. "Sorry, I couldn't do anything for you." Then, dissatisfied with Emily's treatment of me, he questioned her why she was so adamant about my resignation. She was hesitant to talk at first, but she eventually spoke up when he threatened to inform the former president of the situation. She had previously been in a committed relationship that she thought about getting married to, but their separation was caused by her demanding work schedule and subsequent adultery. That previous romantic partner had completed middle school. She felt incredibly upset and deceived by that relationship, which made her distrust people with only a middle school degree, even though she had worked hard in school, attended reputable high schools and universities, and dated guys with educated backgrounds. I was a middle school graduate, so she thought I was the same kind of person as her ex. I was an adversary to her. I felt a tinge of pity upon hearing this. Though Emily may have lost a great deal of her life to a lavish romance, I was not her previous partner. It seemed regrettable to me that a single negative experience could cause someone to view all middle school graduates as unworthy or to assume that they all act in the same manner. It has been a year since then. I moved employment to a company that a friend had recommended to me. Upon making the decision to quit my prior employment and receiving confirmation of my new position, I notified my former teacher, Mr. Thompson. Even though I could hear the anguish in his voice, he gave me encouraging words over the phone when I stopped. However, he was ecstatic to hear about my new career and even got me a navy blue tie to commemorate it. Because I was too weak to tell Mom the truth, I pretended to be headhunted. She didn't ask any questions, even though she undoubtedly knew I was lying. She made me sandwiches and prepared a special lunch for my first day of work. In actuality, my acquaintance referred me to roughly 3 businesses. They all offered fantastic benefits and were open to hiring me, even though I just completed middle school. Of them, Mr. Carter from the company I eventually joined impressed me the most. The day of our interview, which my acquaintance set up, I met Mr. Carter at a cafe. We were early for the scheduled time at the cafe. I had scheduled a meeting time with Mr. Carter, but he hadn't shown up even 5 minutes later. Knowing him to be on time, my friend worriedly pondered, he normally arrives on time. I was going to give someone a call when I wondered if something had happened. At that moment, an old guy rushed over to our table, blotting perspiration from his brow, and apologized profusely for being late. "Mr. Carter, we were worried," my friend said. "You almost never arrive late." "I'm really sorry. I ran into a bit of trouble on the way here," Mr. Carter said in his apology. "Hi, my name is Brad Carter," he said as he gave me his business card. I tried to think of where I had seen him previously because he seemed familiar. I was talking to my friend as I walked to the cafe. My friend's phone called as we were traveling, and as he spoke, I wondered what type of person Mr. Carter was. Something about an old man and an old woman at a police station caught my eye. While a nearby police officer was on the phone, the elderly guy was maintaining eye contact with the elderly woman. A short while later, an old lady's relative ran into the station and continued thanking the old man. Though I wasn't sure at the time, I wondered if he had assisted the elderly woman who had gone missing. "Were you by any chance at the police station earlier?" I questioned him. He answered, "Yeah, I was." An elderly woman was struggling to find her way home. "I couldn't just leave her there, but I had to come see you people. Thus, I apologize for it," he replied, seeming a little ashamed. I was so convinced that I wanted to work for him after our talk. I exclaimed excitedly as our meeting was nearing to an end, "Mr. Carter, I'd like to work for you." He exclaimed, "You beat me to it," while laughing mischievously. "I intended to come see you for myself. We need someone like you at our company, so please come along." So the decision on my employment was made immediately. With my sales background, I made a fast impression at my new job. I saw a huge amount of missed calls when I checked my phone one day during a break. That same number called again, and I got a shiver. I hesitantly replied, "Hello." Emily was there. I honestly couldn't recall deleting her phone when I left the organization. Therefore, I wasn't familiar with the number. A long time has passed. "How are things going for you?" she went on, sounding as though she was anticipating a reunion. "I phoned because I was waiting for you to get in touch with me, but you didn't. You're really unyielding. I've lost my anger. Why don't you return?" Emily's voice, speaking like an ex-lover hoping to reconcile, made me feel icy. I tried to finish the call by saying, "I've moved on to another company, so I'll be going now," but Emily cut me off. "Hold on. I take it that you enjoyed our company and were reluctant to leave?" She said, "Stop being stubborn and come back. I'm not mad anymore." She sounded as though she wouldn't let me end the call until I said aloud. Finally, I said, "I'll go back to the company." I was eager to get off the phone as the afternoon work hours drew near. It was more difficult to hang up the faster I was moving. I felt uneasy at that moment, and Mr. Carter materialized behind me. He said, "May I take over for a moment?" and struck up a conversation with Emily. After some time, Mr. Carter asked her, "Do you want him back as an employee, or are you looking to rekindle a romantic relationship with him?" Making the choice between personal and professional responsibilities appears to be challenging. "It must be difficult for you, Miss Johnson," he said. "It looks like you've lost a significant client and romantic partner. For our business, we would rather not steal such a priceless item." Mr. Carter grinned and told me shortly after the phone ended, "I couldn't just stand by when I sensed something was wrong." Regret the interruption. The conversation was not progressing, so I had to end it and hang up. But Mr. Carter said, If you get any more calls and find yourself in trouble, let me know. He gave me my phone back, grinning as usual. My eyes filled with tears as I thanked Mr. Carter, saying, "Thank you so much, Mr. Carter." Observing my response, he remarked, "One of my responsibilities is to protect our precious staff. Come on, get your spirits up. What say you about this?" He gave me a Coke that he had probably purchased from a vending machine. We both started laughing when he said, "I meant to buy orange juice, but accidentally bought this." He smiled a little awkwardly. Later, I learned from a former coworker at my previous job that Emily persisted in putting her whole attention on boosting sales performance at the expense of staff development. Consequently, new members continued to leave soon after they joined. In her private life, she seemed to be desperate to marry and thought she could depend on me for staff development as well as a marriage partner. But after receiving a direct rejection from Mr. Carter, she gave up. Emily's business failed quickly, leaving her debt-ridden and alone. I had assumed that her father, the former president, would step in and assist her. But after learning about her actions and my predicament, he made the decision to demand complete accountability from her, even if it came from his daughter. I would never be more than one thing to her. I thought Emily's efficiency-driven result was self-inflicted. Simultaneously, I saw that my interaction with Emily paved the way for my meeting Mr. Carter and aided in my personal development. Though I sincerely hope she would repent, think things through, and choose a different course, I don't want to see her again. I want to be like Mr. Carter. I want to think about other people, aid people who are in need, avoid making workers suffer like I did, and develop good talent for the sake of the business and society at large.